Chinatown, you see that over 95% of all the business down there is owned, controlled, and dominated by the Chinese. You cross Canal and go over into Little Italy, where the Italians are the majority population. Over 90% of the business life is controlled by the Italians. You come down to Yorksville, the German town, where the Germans are the majority population, and the business life is under the ownership, control, and domination of the Germans. The Puerto Ricans own the major part of their commerce and business life, and naturally, the chosen ones, Jews, they own everything in their community. They definitely are the pure example of what a person ought to do for themselves. They don't let nobody take nothing out. They don't even eat the food unless it's kosher. And they tell you it's kosher because they have to make it kosher. And they have to put their hands on it. But you and I, dealing with our economic status, we have just proved that we have the money, and we have individuals with large segments of money. But being that we do not behave like other people, we do not keep that money amongst ourselves and let it circulate like all other people do, and we just give it back 8 hours after we get it to the source from which it came. Being that you're handling all this money and you're in this imperialist capital of the world, as Professor Amos Wilson was bringing out in the video presentation, about this is the capital of the master thieves of the world, the imperialists. This is their home. Although they make up 6-7% of the population, they have a criminal syndicate on a worldwide basis that allow them to own, control, and dominate over 80% of the world's wealth. This is their capital. This is the big house. This is where it's managed and controlled and where it is directed from. We just happen to be the porters and maids in the big house. And so all the goodies is here. And we see the boss shifting his good from one place to the other. And every now and then we get a chance to steal some of it and get us a piece of the goodies too. That we think we are blessed because we're around master thieves who have over 80% of the world's wealth. Now the other part of it, dependent and passive. When someone have to feed you and you don't feed yourself, you're dependent on them for food. Someone clothe you and you don't clothe yourself, you're dependent on them for clothing. Someone house you or build your health, education, welfare, other institutions. You are dependent on them for your survival. And it is an old proverb in all cultures, he who feeds you will boss you. And being that we find ourselves dependent on food, clothing, shelter, and protection. Yet, with all these black colleges and all of these wonderful institutions of learning in New York City, all these great scholars, there's no program coming out of the mouths or the minds of any significant effect that's leading African people to solve the mysteries of their economic problem, to say, yeah, we have to eat. Let us pool our monies and our thoughts and our efforts together and get us an agriculture system so that we can feed ourselves. And since you don't do that, it comes back to crazy. You must be out of your mind to let the white man put his hand on all the food before you put it in your stomach. I mean, you must be highly religious because you damn sure ain't no scientist. You believe it's some mojo protecting you from all harms. And that's where you at, why you're at the bottom of everything too. That you believe that you can trust your stomach to a known homicidal maniac. People who has a record of poisoning races out. But you say, well, let the white man keep the food a little longer, and let us pray to this God and that God, and let us don't do nothing concretely about removing ourselves of this dependency and of this potential horror. And it is happening because the nutritional value that they send to the black communities is of the lowest in the world. They take care better of the pigs and the cows than they do the black communities. They send better food to them than they do us up here. But can we complain, being human beings and supposed to possess all of the potential intelligence and capabilities of other people, that we would sit idly by and let another man feed us? Naturally, when he feeds us, he tells us, well, if you want this food, there's some buck dancing and angel mama and I want you to do to get it. Some flunky roles I want you to play. I want you to belittle yourself in front of your wife and your children and your other kid and kin, or I'm not going to feed you. And being that it has been a weapon of the enemy to cripple our minds at birth, the system is designed to wipe the young black kid out before he can almost talk. Number one, he's born in an abnormal environment. Two, the people who going to nurture him, who he going to bond with and shape him, they are victims of white psychology and white propaganda. For example, a big black Zulu woman giving baby for a big black Zulu man, and when the baby come out, she gonna sing him an Irish lullaby. She gonna take him to some bootleg Negro preacher who gonna Christian him, put the stigma of the cross on him, and tell him that as long as you will suffer under this cross, you have it made. But if you dare try to be free of this cross, you're doomed forever. If it ain't the cross, it's another symbol. Because why? The African was blessed with the strongest physique among all human beings to make him adaptable to live everywhere, and with a most creative mind among all human beings to allow him to invent and create his way out of any condition that he finds himself in. Those of us who are acquainted with history, and we didn't come to talk about history as per se, but we who know ourselves know that we were here for millions of years before any other race of people evolved, that we mastered the art of survival. We mastered agricultural and textile building and shelter building. We created the arts and the sciences long, many myriads of years before there was another race of people. So we know who we are and what we are capable of doing. But we do also know that there was an Arab and a European slave trade. And that Arab and European slave trade and colonialism over the African people in the African continent separated the African from reality, from sanity, and put upon him a slave and a colonialist mentality that convinced him that the world belongs to the white man, that intelligence germinated from white people, that beauty was beholden in the white woman, and white woman only. Right and wrong could only come out of the minds of white people. Now that was installed through terror, through education, through mixed breeding, and a conglomerate of horrible and evil schemes that were perpetuated on us by our white brethren. Now the effects of that is still in existence, and that is where the problem comes. The slave thoughts is still in the minds of the African community, transmitted from the slave mama to the slave baby, and the slave preacher and the slave school teacher, living in a slave environment where they are dependent and passive, making it almost impossible for any clarity to be in their thinking. It is designed to produce frustration and confusion so that you cannot get a good thought out of your head. And it says, so you think, so you act. If you act wrong, if you think wrong, you're going to act wrong. If you think you're a Negro, then you're not going to be an African. If you think you're a Caribbean or West Indian, you're not going to be an African. If you think you are a British or Dutch or German or some other alien subject, you're not going to be an African. You're going to be some kind of mental hybrid. Your body and your physiognomy is African, but your mentality and your mental concept is non-African. A freak of nature by any standard of measure. And so consequently, by being led into that type of state by the people who are benefiting by having us in this state, because what happened? Without putting the chains on you, he could put you in a community in Harlem and keep you so passive that they can walk up here and take out 95% of your money and have you laughing and ready to hurt anybody if you tell you that, hey, that's wrong. You're supposed to control the commerce business life of your community like all those other racial and ethnic groups who make up the majority of their population control theirs. But every day in Harlem, non-African people come out here and take up 95% of the money every day. Nobody throw a brick. Nobody even sign a protest. Happy to be robbed by the white massa. The continent of Africa, the richest piece of real estate in the world, your native, natural, normal, moral, legal home. Everybody says that is yours except you and the white man. The white man tell you that because he is stealing the goodies that make him have a high standard of living, and got you confused and frustrated that here you are the legal heirs of all that wealth and you are the poorest people in the world. Got you chasing all kind of phantoms. If you have an economic problem, it must be approached with an economic antidote. If you have a psychological problem, it must be approached with a psychological antidote. Your economic problem is meeting your material needs. What would happen if you were intelligent enough to make that your priority? Poverty would leave you immediately. Unemployment would leave you immediately. The disrespect that is shown to you throughout the world would leave you immediately. You would have so many jobs and positions that you won't be able to fill them. You would have to be hiring other races of people to flunk it for you to help you grow the food to feed yourself, to make the clothing to clothe yourself, to build the houses. And naturally, since we have Europeans and other criminals roaming this earth, you need some protection. You got to be able to keep the wolves off of you. You got to get some weapons of destruction, that if someone come to rob you, they don't ever leave. They die. And set the proper example that I am not a Negro no more. You just can't come in here and take me off and take my wealth and take my community. I have joined the human race. And so consequently, when the world look upon us, whether we in Brooklyn, Bronx, or Staten Island, or whether we in Georgia, Texas, the Caribbean, or in Africa, somebody else is running the commerce business life. Somebody else is dominating the body politics of all communities where we are majority population. Now that is crazy. Now, anybody that can live in peace with that, you must be dead. You know, I used to think zombies were make-believe. When people say, I say no such thing as zombie. They just do that to ridicule us as a people. Then I found out it was true. That I didn't know nothing but zombies. And it remind me, I went to Dr. Jeffrey's class, and Dr. Jeffrey was breaking down the problems confronting the African people. And as he got through telling about how the psychological damage had been done to the African and the methods of the enemy in keeping it that way, one young man jumped up and said, if I believe what you said, I would believe that all of us is out of our mind. Dr. Jeffrey said, I've been trying to tell you that ever since I opened my mouth this day. You are out of your mind, and so is the rest of us. When we can't see that we are human beings and we should be in charge of ourselves. When we would trust the animal that's in charge of our food to feed us, we got to be crazy. You got to be crazy. You ask, where's that Mohawken and the rest of them native people that hung around here, went to the Thanksgiving dinner and did never leave? You know, where's them? Where is it? Now, the whole place is the place, United States of America, which makes it impossible for us to solve our problems because the European in his white psychology and white propaganda has convinced the African people that this is their home. This is a criminally possessed place. A bunch of white criminals came from Europe and disrespected the territorial integrity of the native people here and took these people's land and named this land after one of their white criminal kinspeople. There was no such thing 400 or 500 years ago as no land called United States of America or America. America is a cracker. And it's named after him after they stole the people's land. Now, being the know-for-good and lazy bum that the white race is, he went to Africa and kidnapped and shanghaied and brought us here so we would build the land. And got a lot of nerve to tell the people, don't fool with them black Americans, they lazy. Lazy? What you mean lazy? All the damn work we done around here, and you're talking about we don't want to work. Why should we work anymore? We haven't got paid for the work we done. The hell we want to work some more for? You know? Let him empty his own slop buckets and do his own buck dancing and doing it. He's the one lazy. Oh, I like to hire him. I like for him to give me 400 years of back labor, and let's call it even. We can start it off now. You know, I might make it retroactive for a couple of weeks for him. You know, and we'll see who's lazy. He don't want to work for me. He ain't lazy, but I don't want to work for him. I'm lazy. and I didn't gave him 400 years and didn't get paid for it as it is, not only as I would be lazy, I'd be crazy, really be crazy to keep on being a servitude and a flunky of this diabolical criminal. And that's what's wrong with us. We are trying to claim some legitimacy in a criminal setup that's not ours. It wasn't stole for us. It wasn't originally ours. It's not ours now. Oh, we do have some powerful flunky roles in it, but this is not our land. And the sad part about it is, you would attach yourself to this and turn your back on what is yours when yours is 10,000 times more beneficial than this. And I know that hurt you. I'm trying to get you to leave the master's house and go back to your wealth and your self-respect and your dignity. The African continent is where the African is going to solve his problem. The future of the African in a dignified, respectable way will germinate from the African continent. About you staying here, I don't believe he want to kill you. Why should he want to kill you? You the sweetest thing ever happened to the white race. So you love the white race better than the white race love itself. There's a lot of things that the white race won't do to preserve itself that Bowles will jump up and say, hey, boss, I'll do it for you and show you how to keep white people over us forever. You want me to kill my mama and a couple of my relatives to prove it to you? They're dead. And that's not no joke. That's a reality. The psychological conquest of the African, it's a temporary thing if we make it temporary. It's only permanent because we volunteer to let the European continue to control our minds, to let anybody control our minds. As I started off, we are the original people. We made it millions of years before we met anybody, which is proof evidence we know how to make it. All of the empires, all of the languages and the arts and sciences, the religions, they are creations out of our mentality. We have nothing to be ashamed of, not even the slave era, to prove that we could go through that. As a matter of fact, everybody all over the world look upon us as marvels. They say those black people in America they're some wonderful people. They must be magicians, because if they can stay side by side with that white homicidal maniac and live, they got to know something. And then again, not only we staying side by side, particularly in these ghettos, it ain't the best living in the world, but Whitey got a bill on his hand. You know, he got to keep the checks coming, keep the food stamps coming, keep the Medicaid coming, the methadone and the methodex, you know. He got that bill on his hand. And if it ain't there, going to be big trouble the next day. You know, you will see a revolution. But why? What is that? When he got the gold and the diamonds and the coffee and the cocoa and the uranium and the inexhaustible wealth that should be yours. You should be the owners, the controllers and managers of it. You should be the one that is hiring him, having him flunky to get a little of your natural wealth. But if you're crazy, you won't know what's yours. And that's what America is designed to drive the African crazy, to make sure that he do not understand that the world of Africa and the black communities is for him to own, control, to dominate. We came here tonight